a walk. I know when it's like, she gives me that look, you know?
Well, somebody had a dog agreeing with the rules. I heard them barking. Well, thank you. So we have a couple of important things on the agenda tonight, lots of things. Starting with the capital reserve transfer, petty cash for student activities. We may have to, Jared, unless that's an emergency, we may put that last. And then an architect proposal for the entranceway. And then we wanted to have an opportunity to keep you up to date on the audit situation. So somebody scroll down to non-agenda items for me. Maybe they're there. Hold on. Yeah. So the preliminary numbers, a little bit reminder of the index. So Jared, let's start. So can we go back up to the top, please, of the agenda? Okay, Jared, we've started into a discussion about the capital reserve transfer, and that means out of the general fund into the capital reserve for, I call them deferred maintenance projects that would not come out of the bond fund, but would come out of the general fund, those types of projects. So we've been talking about the East Pike roof and the electric board panel at Horseman School, and there was something else as I remember. So Jared, you want to kick us off on a discussion?
Yes, ma'am. You know, this topic really came up as we have been talking about the preliminary closing numbers for the last previous school year, 2019-20, and the surplus, the 1.4 million surplus that we are looking at ending the school year with. And we discussed at the last Audit and Finance Committee, so I'm not going to cover it in too much detail for the sake of time. The reasons why we are ending last year in a surplus, you know, we saved different areas, and because of COVID-19, personnel, transportation, sub costs, with leaving our revenues pretty much the same. So that's pretty much what brought forth this $1.4 million surplus that we're really discussing, and the need and the possibility of transferring some of that surplus to capital reserve, which is the fund that the district, you know, without having bond proceeds, which is what we have right now to use on some projects, the capital reserve is what the district uses to do maintenance type items across the district in any given year. You know, we typically use it to for carpeting purposes, to replace desks, for to buy, you know, a maintenance truck if we need it. Those type of items that happen, you know, on a routine basis every year, that is not really part of the general fund. Right now, capital reserve has about, you know, at the beginning of the year has about $800,000 sitting in it. But we're looking at doing a new roof for East Pike in the next year or two. That $800,000 with everything else that comes through that fund won't cover that roof. So the board's been having some preliminary discussions that do we transfer money this year or from the previous year, 1920, to help cover some of those bigger expenses that we know are coming. And we can use this money for them if we make the transfer into capital reserve without having to budget a huge expenditure in the general fund to cover it. This just gives us some more flexibility to cover those projects as they come up here in the future.
So are you saying there's $800,000 in the account now, in the reserve account?
Yes, there's roughly that. I mean, but there's always some projects planned in 2021, smaller ones again. You know, we always have carpet replacement. We always have just some general upkeep items.
Well, how much are you looking for? I mean, what do you think is a good, give me a range of numbers that you think might be sensible for us to reserve at this point.
I think anywhere, my recommendation, and you know, some in conversation with Mr. Vukovic as well, would be somewhere between $800,000 to $1 million. That would leave you, you know, some money still to help, you know, transfer into future years to help balance your budget and general fund. Because anything you don't transfer just rolls over into fund balance and can be used in future years to help balance your budget if it needs to be. So I wouldn't recommend moving everything, because we may need that money in the future to help balance the general fund. So like I said, I would say anywhere between $800,000 to $1 million.
And you feel that that's good even if there's an extraordinary rainy day that we hadn't been foreseeing?
for a rainy day that
The general fund.
for the general fund. I think so. I mean, I think, our budget projections show some deficits in the next couple years. But I think, our projections weren't showing a surplus for last year either. So I think
Last
we
2
have
years, 3 years.
yeah, I mean, we have other ways of hopefully closing those deficits. But East Pike needs a new roof, and we need to pay for it somehow. And we can do that either out of the bond proceeds, or we can make this transfer.
Well, I don't, I think that we make the transfer out of the general fund rather than using the bond proceeds, because that's a different discussion tonight. I'm open to opinion. I was thinking sort of preliminarily tossing out the idea for discussion among the board members that I thought, well, let's split the baby with the bathwater and put about $900,000 in reserve. But I'm open to $1 million. I think if the administration is telling us that we're going to be okay, and we've taken good advantage of the opportunities that ironically, that the pandemic has afforded us. And there aren't many, but there are some on the finance side, that we should open the discussion up to some number between 800,000 and $1 million. So I'll just, let's start with Tom Harley. Do you want to go first? I think I'll just call on people. And then I want to hear, Mike, I'm going to ask you to talk about it last, please.
Hey, Julie.
Absolutely.
A question to Jared, if you would. Is this money able to be transferred back into the general?
It is not. Once it's transferred to capital reserve, it cannot come back to the general fund.
Okay, so if we put $1 million in, it's stuck there. If we put $800,000 in, we can put an additional $200,000 in later. Is that correct?
Yes, you can always you can do whatever transfer you want in the future, as long as whatever year you transfer it. Like when we close out 1920, if you vote for this transfer tonight, we can't go back. We can't go 6 months from now and transfer money again from 1920. You can do it in the current school year, 2021, as long as it doesn't throw you over budget. And we will know that by June. But yes, you can always make future transfers.
So there's not a lot of incentive one way or the other, whether overfunded or underfunded. Is that correct?
No. Yeah. Yes. I mean, you are correct. There's no major incentive.
Okay. Okay. We just can't move it. We can move it left to right. We just can't move it right to left.
Yes.
Okay. So in that respect, we probably want to be funding a little short and keeping some cash in our back pocket if we have to.
Yeah. I mean, the million would be the highest that we would recommend. I'm more comfortable with 800,000, but willing to also meet you in the middle as well.
At 400,000, is that what you're saying?
No.
Always good to be flexible. Okay, Tom, thank you. Terry Kerr, as head of buildings and grounds, do you have any thoughts about this, please?
Yeah, thanks, Julia. We had quite a good meeting last Monday night at Building and Grounds, and we basically, I think, got consensus that we were going to pursue getting estimates for the East Pike Roof project. So this is really a great news. I'll say again that there is this surplus that we're able to talk about. And I'm going to lobby, I guess. I'll agree with you, Julia. I think that we ought to do the $1 million. The past several years, we have been, I think, going down with the fund balance in this deferred maintenance account. And as everybody knows, the deferred maintenance list keeps getting longer. So I think we ought to take advantage of this opportunity and transfer the $1 million. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Terry. Yeah, there's always a temptation if you don't reserve it, you'll spend it elsewhere. So it forces us to be very disciplined about these projects. I think there's that benefit.
And I think the last thing I'll just add is I think, too, it gives us more comfort level or more range that we don't have to touch those bond funds to do what I consider normal maintenance. So,
thank you. Yeah, okay, I'm following you. Uta Lowry, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, if I can get my microphone to turn on. I agree. I think if we have the ability to move funds, I'm more for kind of splitting the difference between the 800,000 and the $1 million and moving 900,000. if we feel like we should reserve some in case we need it, because we don't know what COVID and what those challenges are going to be, and what other resources might or might not be available out there. But I definitely think we should move some of those funds.
Okay, thank you. Let me see. I don't know. Tammy Blank, you're here. Would you like to say?
Yeah, I had to find my mic and recording. Yeah, I like the idea of putting 900,000 in reserve. I don't know. I'm gonna defer to everybody the consensus here, since I'm not too steady with financial forecasts and stuff. So.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, but so you're not opposed, I guess.
No, I'm not opposed.
Alrighty, okay, thank you. Yeah, is Barb Barker around? I don't know if I've seen her name. Is she here?
She told me she wasn't gonna be on this evening.
Okay.
So.
And so let's move. Is Tamara Leeper here? No? Okay, then that leaves who? Walter, would you like to chime in, please?
I think Cinda hasn't been called on yet. I'll ladies first.
Cinda, I'm sorry. Would you like to say?
I was just sitting here waiting. I'm being patient. I agree with everything that's already been said. I think we should do the transfer. I would probably lean more toward the $1 million than the lower numbers, but as long as we transfer, I'm fine.
Okay, yeah, that's what we're trying to get. We're trying to build what is a sensible consensus. So anything else you want to point out, Cinda?
I do know that we do have other things that I consider to be general maintenance things that should be taken care of. And the one thing that I am specifically talking about from the last building and grounds meeting was they had the Horace Mann electrical situation on that list. And we've never done anything with that ever since I've been on the board, ever since I've been going to meetings, and I don't understand. If you want to talk about safety and security, if you've got an electrical panel that's outdated and Federal Pacific and overloaded, I think that to be safe, we should just spend the money and go ahead and do that. We don't know what we're going to do with the building, but no matter what we do with the building, it needs to be safe. So I'd like that to be considered as part of the expenditures from that $1 million or 800,000 or 900,000, whatever we transfer.
So you're closer to that 1 million mark.
Yeah, I prefer the $1 million, but I'll defer to other people if you want to go lower. But I would prefer the $1 million. I think we have things that we have listed and have had listed for a long time that should be taken care of.
Okay, now I think Walter, you're up, please.
Thanks, Julia. So first I have a question for Jared. What is the fund balance, including this surplus as of June the 30th?
With the money prior to any transfer, sir, the fund balance is just under $9 million, $8,960,000.
Say that again, Jared.
8.9 million.
I never thought I'd see that. Okay, go ahead, Walter.
Okay. At the risk of being the anti-curmudgeon here, I certainly agree with the comments that have been made prior to this about delaying a lot of this deferred maintenance. I would argue that we could really take this fund balance down to 7 million and not hurt the general fund balance. That's basically $1.5 million or 1.9 in this case, to transfer to catch up on some of these. I think, and Jared, I'll ask you to kind of confirm, but if it was at 7 million and we have a $55 million budget, that's still somewhere around 8%. Is that correct? I don't have a calculator in front of me, but and I think the standard is in that 5 to 6 range, or what most people consider to be a reasonable fund balance. So I would actually argue that we should put more in the capital reserve to catch up on some of these other issues that have been put off.
Well, certainly our ratio, our leverage ratio is going to get better, I think, as we paid down some debt this year. Is that correct, Jared? Because you just paid off 2 bonds.
We did just pay off 2 bonds, yes, in September.
So that's going to free up even more a little bit to, well, Walter, you're putting a big number on the table. I wasn't expecting. Okay. So you're saying you're comfortable even up to 1.5 million, Walter?
Yeah, only because of where the current fund balance is. If it's at 8.96, almost 9 million, and if I'm not mistaken, if we're above 8% on the fund balance of our budget, I think it forces us not to raise taxes in the for the next fiscal year. So my concern is that that 8% seems to be a kind of a magic number, and so I would be willing to take the operating fund balance clear down to 8%, barring some new program of a substantial cost that the administration may be working on, for our academics or what have you. But it seems to me that given the level of, and I'm sorry to repeat myself, but given the level of deferred maintenance and where the current fund balance is, yes, I would certainly go to 1.5 on the transfer.
So a question then. So Jared, you have, we don't know what that roof at East Pike's going to cost, but let's plug it in at 800. What do you have it on the list?
I believe right around 720,000 was the estimate we got back in August, I believe, when we were looking at doing it.
And then what do you have down for the business at the electric? We don't need that building burning down. The electric over at Horseman. What do you have that down for?
I believe Mr. Trout has that at 250,000, just as an estimate. We've never gotten, I think, formal quotes or anything for that.
Jared, I think it's less than that. I think that's the quote for the elevator and the electrical. That seems extremely high to me to replace the panels. If all we're doing is replacing the panels, that's different than if we're adding additional circuits and upgrading the incoming power. So if I don't want to panic anybody about that number, is my point. I don't think that's the right number by a lot.
Well, I'm not panicked about it, but I'm just trying to run a tally in my head. We can use $1 million in the blink of an eye practically. But the question is, well, Mike, what are you thinking? You heard Walter toss out a nice number.
No, thank you, Madam Vice President. I think at this point, I'd go with the $900,000 number. You can always add more in the following year. I think if your priority is to take care of that roof, that allows us to do that. And then we can go get a quote if the board and the Buildings and Grounds Committee and the board decides to go after replacing the electrical system at Horseman, then that gives you some extra cushion leeway. But again, if our biggest priority is the roof, that allows us to do that. And it dedicates us to make sure we're disciplined enough to do that and get that done. So I would go with the $900,000, but I have no problem going with the $1 million as well, but I'd be comfortable at 900,000. Also, because Madam Vice President, we don't know what their second half of this year will look like with COVID and any other impact it may have on us, staffing, supplies, PPE, et cetera, et cetera. So we can always put more in the following year. or you can always, after maybe in the summer, make another deposit to the capital reserve. So at this point, I'd feel comfortable at 900,000, but I certainly would have no disagreement with $1 million either.
Okay, so we have anybody, okay, so, this is now, chime in if you want, if you have any, want to say something about the 900 versus $1 million. We seem to have some consensus. And Walter, I appreciate you saying what you did. I'd love to put more in, but I think, you know, we still have time, but I think we ought to reserve what we can now.
The issue there, Julia, in part was, I think there is an advantage in transferring it now, and Jared just touched on it briefly, because it does get to be effective in the last fiscal year. I think the transfer effective date becomes the 30th of June. So I don't know whether there's a significant enough of a advantage to that. I certainly understand adding it later. And, you know, it's also a question of the will of the board. If the board's consensus is that it should be around $1 million, then I'm certainly going to, you know, support that. I just think that there's a lot to be done, and we do have, you know, a substantial amount of cash to look at this. Now, the other way to look at it is to use my same kind of concept here, and next year at this time have this exact same conversation. If the concerns that Mike has, as far as the, you know, the second semester and COVID not impacting us the way that it might, and we're able to stay on track with the budget, that extra $500,000 or $1 million may still be laying there at the end of next year to transfer and do another project or add to the projects we're working on. So, but I'm okay with it either way. But I do think I would be remiss if I didn't at least bring up the concept based on where and again, it's strictly based on where the current fund balance is now.
Well, I agree, but there's something about having this big, well, could we agree on 950? That's right down the center. Could we agree on 950? Does anybody have an objection to 950? Tom?
I'll object a little bit here, and I agree with Walter that 1.5 is not outlandish. We certainly have the need. I would advocate that since we can't move the money back, that we actually put the smaller number in and reserve the ability to see how we're doing, see what happens this fall, see what else we have to do. You know, if we have to hire a faculty member, it's $100,000. So I'd like to keep a little flexibility. So I would advocate that the smaller number be moved over permanently, and reserve the right to add to it should we be able to.
So 950 or 900? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about 800.
Oh, okay. Okay, I missed that. Okay, thank you. Terry Kerr, would you like to chime in at this point from the point of view of your committee?
Yeah, I think to move this, I'm good with the 950 if that's where we can get consensus. Because we also had the ball field turf on that list, and I know that we're in the process of digging into that. But no matter how that research comes out, the turf's going to need replaced in probably, like it sounds like, a year or two. So, you know, if we can have a little bit of buffer now put in reserves, that's not a bad thing.
Well, it disciplines us. I mean, it creates a discipline, then we know we've done it, and then you got to get to work and you got to get it done. But so you'd be happy with the 950?
Sure.
Okay. Cinda, 950? Maybe, yes, no?
Well, the more Walter talks, the more I think that I want it to be a lot more than that. Simply because I know what people are like. And if we leave some of it in the general fund, it'll be there and it'll be like candy sitting there that we just want it. We can't stand it until we spend it. So looking at the idea that we need to change the culture in the school district and start being more in tune with saving money and being very careful of our expenses, if we put a larger amount in the capital reserve and we can't get it back out, it will make us be more careful about the things that we decide to spend. So I'll go with whatever everybody else comes up with, but I think Walter has a very, very, very good point about the percentages and the idea that once it's in there, we can't spend it on anything but things that are maintenance. I think that's a good idea. Sorry, Julie, I didn't need to change my mind, but Walter convinced me to put more away.
No, I don't mind. No, this is what we're trying to flesh this out. I mean, and because we got to write a number into this motion tonight, assuming we want to do the motion. Uta, can you move to 950? Are you okay with that, or do you want to keep it lower?
I can definitely move to 950. I'm starting to agree with Cinda and Walter, only because I think we also need to be aware of what the optics are if we have a huge fund balance and we've got major cuts and staff reductions happening at businesses and major employers in our area. So, if this makes us tighten our belts a little bit, not to the point where we're strapped and can't operate, but it might not be a bad idea.
Alrighty. Okay. So that's Tammy Blank. Are you okay with 950, or do you want it lower, higher? What would you like to do here?
I agree with Walter, Cinda, and Uta. The 950 is good. It's great.
Okay. Okay. Anybody I missed? I don't think. Okay, Mike, can you live with 950? And Jared, can you live with 950?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Okay, so it's going to be Jared. Did I hear from you?
Yes, I am good with that number, and we can always revisit it in June.
We can always revisit it. Okay, so we'll put on the agenda tonight. So we're okay with voting on it. Let's insert the number 950. I'll make that motion. So the committee is recommending 950.
Yep, I can enter that number in the agenda for tonight.
Okay. I want to get to the next thing that's on my mind a lot. I know we have petty cash for student activities. We'll do that next. But after this, the architect proposal for new Eisenhower entranceway and possible replacement of modular classrooms. I just want to preface by saying it's 6 o'clock. We have executive session at 6:30. So we have to. There's a motion on the agenda tonight, and I'm kind of ambivalent about it because when I saw the proposal from the architect, I had a bunch of questions and would like to have some clarifications on that letter before we actually vote. Now, I don't know if anybody else has some questions they'd like to ask about the proposal. I hope you've all had a chance to take a look at it, but that's where I'm coming from the point of view of the Finance Committee. I see a number, but I don't quite, there's some things I'd like to have clarified before we vote. So,
Julia, can I just interject? I have not had a chance to look at it. The email came this morning, and I don't understand how we are just now seeing it. I wasn't able to be at Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation, so I don't know if it was reviewed then and if a recommendation came out of there. But I haven't had a chance to look at it, so I don't feel like I can vote on anything tonight.
Can I add my 2 cents in, Julia?
yeah, please.
When I saw the email, I read it, and my opinion or comment is that is more than what the Building Grounds Committee was expecting or wanting for a proposal or scope of work for this potential project. We just wanted some conceptual options at this point, and I will give credit to Buchard Horn that they did put some detail and thought into what they proposed to us, but that is further than what I wanted to do or my committee wanted to do right now. So one option I was considering was revising that motion tonight to what I just said.
Okay, if I can,
Revise, how would you frame? So you're talking about maybe an amendment or whatever. What would you want to say?
Instead of reading that motion, I would read another motion
And just so the committee is aware, Elijah Dale is on the phone or on the meeting here with us tonight. He is an architect from Buchard Horn who helped put the proposal together. So if there are questions or concerns, he may be able to address some of those here tonight.
Yeah, and that's fine, Jared, but I wrote on it. I'm not sure I have questions for him because what is being proposed is not what we were looking for.
Terry, if I could jump in here.
Sure.
What I was hoping that we could have is a sketch and a budget. Are we going to spend $180,000 on the entrance at Eisenhower, or $1.3 million? Are we going to replace the four classrooms? Is that going to run us $2 million or $1 million? I think if we have those kind of numbers in front of us, we'll be able to prioritize the projects and look at our overall thing way before we do a whole bunch of design work. And Elijah, what your proposal is to do all the work like we're going to go through a whole bidding process on this and construct something of some magnitude. And I'm not sure the board's not there yet.
That the committee stressed that last week, that this was not a project we were moving forward with at this point. We wanted to look at options and then decide whether we're moving forward.
Yeah, and if we had those options, and again in the sketch format with an order of magnitude budget beside them, both things have to happen for us to decide. Okay, what I don't want to do is to go through this whole process and have a $3 million project in May that we weren't aware of. Okay, I'd like to say, okay, we're going to put the entrance in. It's going to cost us about this much, and when the project comes into that much, then we move ahead with it. We don't have a sticker shock. So
Joey, I could read to you what my revised motion would be.
Okay, go ahead.
The board.
Hang on a minute, Terry. Elijah had a hot mic there. I think he was. They were going to maybe say something. Maybe we ought to let them have a quick say, and then go ahead with your reading.
Well, let's tighten this up, Elijah. If you could just direct to Tom's question.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, thank you guys all for the opportunity to sit in and answer questions like this. I think that's a great thought, and certainly one of the main drivers in this proposal was trying to get you guys ready to bid in spring. I understood that was going to be that was a goal of the board, and that sounds like that's not necessarily the case. Where we would feel like it is possible, it would be very tight, and it would require a lot of streamlined decision making on both our parts as well as yours. And it sounds like, at least what I've heard so far in this meeting, is that you're looking for something much more conceptual and something to build consensus. And that would completely change our scope and what we're proposing to you.
Yeah, but thank you, Elijah. I mean, I think, and then I want to hear what Terry has to say, because I think the idea was that we all kind of came to an agreement that we've got, for safety and security purposes and for design purposes, we need to do something with the entranceway to Eisenhower. I think you all were aware of that at the architecture firm. And then we talked about these old modular classrooms that are getting too decrepit. So that's kind of where the board's focus is. But my concern, and I think maybe Terry shares this, is that we want to start something, because you don't do it, and pretty soon you're into the winter and you're working on other projects, and then we've got this to worry about. So we don't want to delay forever because Eisenhower needs some work. So Terry, what would you propose we do?
The board asked the administration to obtain an estimate for a proposal from Buchard Horn Architects to develop conceptual options for a revised entrance and the possible replacement of the modular classrooms at Eisenhower Elementary.
Okay, now that's a lot. So we're being much more specific. I don't think your paper that you sent us addressed that. But if we were to vote on it tonight, Terry, would you have any, if we were to look at your amendment, would you have any idea of how much money you want to outlay just to get those answers?
Well, I think what I'm thinking is this motion only gives the administration then to talk with Buckhart Horn again to get this proposal, and then they'll come back with a price. I'm not asking them to, I'm not giving the approval for Buckhart Horn to move forward. Just give us a revised estimate, I'll call it, because they gave us one already, but it's for a different scope.
And then it would come back to your committee?
Yes. And it'll come back to the next board meeting then.
Okay, what's everybody think? Go ahead, somebody, what do you think?
Julia,
Yeah.
I have a major concern that I tried to find out. Where did the idea come from that we want this project to be done by the end of next summer? That schedule that was listed in that email seemed to be really rushing things, and I didn't know that we were in any kind of a situation where we wanted to rush with anything. I thought we wanted to go slow to go fast. And we didn't even start going slow with this yet. We're just at the beginning, and I'm just a little bit confused.
Well, we need to start somewhere, and I think what happened is we need to start somewhere. So the first place we thought we would, it's my understanding of buildings and grounds, I was at that meeting, you know, where do we start? Well, the intelligent place to start would be with the architects. So I think that what Terry's asking then is just to get another type of a proposal, right, Terry?
Correct. And I want to say too, Elijah, don't take this, that I don't think at this point Buckhart Horn did anything wrong. You put together a proposal with what you were asked to do from the school district. So it was different. Somewhere the communication changed from our committee meeting to you.
Well, we don't necessarily, do we really need a motion tonight? Excuse me, Elijah, this one more comment. Do we really need a motion tonight, Terry, to do that? Or can we just table that motion or take it off the agenda and direct Elijah tonight without a motion?
Well, you'd have to ask Mike probably.
Mike, what do you think?
When you talk about some cost, that'd be weird, but at this point, I think if he goes back and gives us another proposal, then we can go back. I mean, right now, I don't know what we're voting on. Like, if you don't like what he provided and you want a different set of work, which I apologize, because I thought we did exactly what the buildings and ground asked us to do, and that's my fault. There's no cost to get another proposal. So if you're asking for another proposal, then I think Elijah can simply go back and get that for us, and we can then address it at later committee meetings. So again, if you don't like what's on the table, I think Elijah may have a better idea of what the board wants now, and there's no cost for him to go back and give us another proposal. If you were to accept that proposal, then that's when we'd have to make a motion as we're spending some funds. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. What I want to know though is stuff like, I mean, Tom wanted to start with cost. The questions I had was is that a complete list? I mean, I was kind of like, there's a lot that needs, there's a lot, it's a beautiful school. You could do a lot with it. Is that a broad enough proposal with the bond monies, or do we want something beyond the two things we've already discussed?
Yeah, I think this has always been a tough point of contention that we spent a lot of time talking. In fact, I feel like we talk about it every month for the last 2 years. I think this is our chance for Tom and Terry to give the input that they want so that they get what they want. Saying that administration didn't convey the right thing, this is a chance to maybe just remove us from that conversation and give Elijah direct feedback on what you want, because I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what else to say in this point. I think at this, we know it's an issue. We know we want to address it. We know, and we have to start, like you said, somewhere, Madam Vice President, start to work somewhere. But I think maybe if we could take this time now to really Elijah to ask for some clarifying questions about what the board's looking for, that he can go back and come back with us with something else. Because at this point, I don't know what else to do or say on the matter.
Okay, fair enough. Elijah, what can you advise us to do? What is it that's on your mind?
Certainly. Yeah, no offense taken on any of this. I understand this is the first time we're getting to talk here, so that's good. And there might have been some miscommunications, but and I'd also say we're happy to help you in whatever capacity that may be. So I would say this: if you were looking to push something ahead, and you were looking at something to be constructed next year, if we're drawing out the conceptual and design process, that's not going to be possible next spring if we're going to further and further, like a month even down the road. But as far as the conceptual design process is concerned, I would like to know if what the scope that I've outlined there, which includes new offices, a renovation of the interior space to tie into those new office areas, and the modular units. If that is all that's concerned, that's going to be involved in the construction scope and the design scope, we could give you some ballpark estimates on what that could possibly be. And it might be a pretty wide range to start, but it'll give you something to keep in your heads. And that is what is sort of driving how we're generating the fee assumptions for the proposal. So if it's less work that we're thinking about, or less costly work, our fee would come down because it would be a less complicated design and less involvement there. So I guess questions for you guys in regards to what we can pull together for you and for the next meeting. I heard Julia, you mentioned potential other things that might be thought about for the school.
Well, right now, I think that's the key decision. Do we want you to come back with a more detailed proposal about just the two part, the office and the modulars? And I think that's what Mr. Kerr was looking for.
Julia,
Yeah.
this is Walter. I don't know that we're looking for a lot more detail in the proposal that I just put forward, as much as kind of a brainstorming concept. There was at some point in time mentioned just taking one of the classrooms up next to the existing and creating a entry office, and that was maybe $100,000 versus the $1.5 million we just spent at East Pike, or is there something in between? And I think really what at least I'm looking for, I think Tom and Terry are the same way, could you give us maybe 3 different options in 3 different price ranges as to what that entrance should look like? And then the same kind of a thing and for example, okay, we're talking about the 4 modular classrooms, but if the board decided to take one of those classrooms at East Pike and make it the entryway office, does that maybe mean we have to build a 5th classroom to replace it? So even the classrooms, I think there should be some potential option as to what those configurations might look like and how much they might cost. And again, I think that, as Tom pointed out, are those classrooms $1 million event, or are they $2 or $3 million? Well, none of us really know that. And if we're going to kind of sort this out, that's kind of the sort of brainstorm ideas with some numbers that I think would be helpful. I'll bow out of it.
Yeah, and we can certainly provide that.
But I think what we're saying is, I don't think we're ready to vote tonight. Right? I understand. Tom, you were going to say something.
I keep trying to say something. There's a couple of different ways to go on that front entrance. One is to convert the front classroom, which could be done by summer. And the other one is to do a full entry like we did at East Pike. Those are numbers that would be useful for us to have, that or even a range. Replacing the 4 classrooms, I think, is a fairly simple, again, a simple event, and we have an order of magnitude of what we're talking about. I think once we have those in hand, we can make some decisions relatively quickly. Do we want to spend that much money in that building or not? Do we want to have, for $250,000, we move the office up front of the classroom and we're done. Those are things that if we had in front of us, I think we can move relatively quickly. Then once we get focused on how much each option costs, I'd rather at this point that they not get involved in maintenance of the building. The windows across the district have not been replaced. The roofs across the district have been. There's mechanical systems. I mean, I'm trying to simplify this search a little bit, Elijah. The boiler in that building is relatively brand new. We've done a lot of work there. That's not the question. Okay. So I'd rather keep his focus on getting us a schematic that we can deal with, look at, and move forward with.
Okay. Thank
Ms.
you.
Madam Vice President, can I ask a silly question on my part? Elijah, I don't want to sound silly when I say this, and it's ignorance, not arrogance, so I apologize in advance. All these questions everyone's asking you, isn't exactly what your proposal said you will answer for us? We want this option, we want that option. Isn't that what the scope of the work that you brought forward would exactly do, is give us options with cost and estimates?
Yeah, absolutely. Not a dumb question at all. Yeah, we would be presenting certainly in that first phase or first milestone, a number of options along with order of magnitude estimates. And that range will only tighten, obviously, as we go forward into schematic design. But in that first, in a conceptual programming sort of exercise, which is what it sounds like you guys are looking to do now, we would be presenting options with estimates so that you could make decisions on what you want to move forward with.
And that's for 38,000.
No, it would be less than that for that first step that we're talking about. I mean, that would be.
It sounds like not. So yeah, what would it be? Because we could do a not to exceed motion tonight.
Sure. I mean, that would be. It would not exceed the milestone 1 that we have outlined there, and depending on which is 15,000.
15,000, yeah.
And it may be even less than that, depending on how many meetings we want to have, the intensity of whatever brainstorming and charrettes that we're talking about.
Okay, you're on mute, Julia.
Okay, I was going to say we're very intense as a board, so we're a lot of fun though. But here's the thing: 15,000, I think, is a reasonable fee to get us a couple of schematic options. We don't know what those options are going to cost, but we've got to start somewhere. And I think that this firm is busy, and I think the sooner we start to get them signed off, the better off they are. So Terry, would you be okay with making your motion to go to milestone 1 at 15,000?
Yes, but can I say a couple things? I'd like to go a little bit further on the modular classrooms. There was a couple of consultants ago, I think McKissick, they had developed a whole, I'm going to say maybe 4, 5, or 6 different options for those modular classroom replacements already there. So I'd ask Elijah if you guys haven't looked at those, maybe look at those. And then, I think we also got to consider what we could, how many classrooms do we want? Just because there's 4 there doesn't mean we're not going to put 3 or 6 or 8. So I think we need to have some brainstorming or such about that. And I would also want to have another meeting there with Buckhart Horn prior to them getting started on this, so we can reach some more consensus and narrow the scope down before you spend time with this endeavor.
Are you arguing for the full 38?
No. I'm just trying to narrow what we're asking View Card 1 to do now.
Okay. Mr. Dolly, do you think this is possible?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that we would absolutely be looking at and reviewing whatever documentation you guys have from the past, and former studies, would be helpful if you guys are able to pick out elements that you like or dislike about them, and that would help to direct us. We're trying to understand where our place is here, whether you're looking for us to come up with ideas and help you and open up options, or whether you're trying to, at this point, narrow down some of the options, given that you've had a number of studies performed already.
I would hate to say it's probably a hybrid of that, because we want your ideas, but there's a lot of useful information that we've already paid for, so we don't want to waste that either. So,
Okay.
One other thing I'll say to try to narrow this down a little bit more is, I guess the one good thing that we got out of what you've done so far is that it's too aggressive of a schedule, my opinion, for us to try to get something done for next year. So we did learn that. I think that, I don't think we're at a point where we have to do something in the spring on either one, the entrance or the classrooms.
Okay. So we've had a little bit of a discussion.
Julia, I think Uta's been trying to break in there.
Oh, Uta, go ahead.
So I think the thing that's important to let you know is, in the past, some of the options that we've been presented with were like, this is the only option and it is the Taj Mahal of options. And I am not an architect. I can barely draw a straight line, but I can walk into a building and go, there's a much easier, just as safe option if we could do this, this, and this. Now, I know some of that comes down to, can the wall be removed? Can we do X, Y, and Z? But I think that's in part of what we've dealt with that has us a little hesitant to, fully commit and say, yep, we're ready to go, because we feel like there have been times we've been told that we were not clear on what it is that we wanted. And maybe that makes us less clear, but I do think we need kind of a variety of things. And obviously, this is what you do. This is what you're an expert at, right? I don't ask someone to come and do work at my house and then tell them how to do it. But when we need options at a variety of different levels that still meet the same basic needs.
Thank you. And yeah, part of our job is helping you guys come to a consensus. This is your district, your building, your money, your community. So, and we fully understand that. We'll give you recommendations and help you along with these sorts of discussions. And that's part of the reason I'm here tonight, is to hopefully answer some of these questions and give you a better understanding of what we're trying to do here and how we can help you. And one of those ways is to help you come to decisions based on the stuff that we present.
Okay. All right. Okay. But yeah, I think this has been a very sensible discussion. But the question we have on the table right now for the board, I'm speaking to the board members now. We've got a motion on the table for the agenda. So Terry, I think it's up to you to decide. I mean, give us an idea of what you would want to see happen here. I mean, I'm fine. You can read that amended motion again to us, or we can just not do a motion and direct this gentleman tonight as to what we want to see done.
Walter, are you going to say something?
Yeah, my suggestion here, I don't think it requires a motion to have them come back and put a second proposal together. I think we just have, whether this is sufficient to do it here at this committee, or whether have Mike do it. I don't know that it's going to require a motion to have them present a second proposal. So to kind of keep it simpler, perhaps we just don't read that motion. The only other thing that I would add, Elijah, is I'm not sure when our next Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting is. I think it's on the 16th of November. But I believe, as a board, I think you heard some folks mention that some of us only saw this at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock this morning. Whether or not you couldn't come back to us, say a week ahead of time, so we have some time to mull over what it is that you're proposing. I think it'll flow much better.
Walter, if I may, the suggestion that we approve the administration to negotiate this, and I think Elijah might have a better idea of what we're looking for with a not to exceed number that would allow us to pick up 2 weeks on this, as opposed to waiting to the next board meeting to approve an agreement.
Okay, so we have fundamentally two different opinions here. One says, so we have to it's now 6:29. Now we got to figure out what we want to do tonight. Do we want a motion, or do we want to do it Tom's way, or even Terry, or do we just want to let this go and tell this gentleman what we want to have done and do it at the next board meeting? That's the decision, and let's make it. Okay.
Elijah, have you seen any of the other plans, the other ideas that we have had presented to us?
I have not seen any of those other plans yet. That would be part of our programming exercise.
Okay.
I'm okay with reading my revised motion, putting not to exceed $15,000 on it. But I'd also like to have a meeting like we did at Ben Franklin and meet with the architect and make sure we're all on the same page before they get started.
Well, I can live with that. I think that's a sensible motion. That way he's got his firm and they have something concrete in front of them, and we know that what to expect. It puts us all on a business footing here in terms of something definitive. Does anybody have an objection to what Terry's motion would be? Hearing none. Okay, so Terry, it looks like from my point, our committee's fine with you saying your motion, if not to exceed 15,000, we can at least get started, and then all of you can sort of start to consult. Okay?
Yep.
Okay. Now.
And wait a minute, Julia, that will involve Elijah and his people being able to see the previous plans that we've had, and will enable us to walk through the building with the architects like we did at Ben Franklin.
Yeah.
That's all going to be included in Terry's motion.
Elijah? Yes?
Yeah.
No, maybe.
Yeah, that would absolutely be included in our scope.
Okay, and then is there a time frame requirement with that or for that?
Good point.
We're ready to help you guys. And with this motion that I'm hearing, we would be able to get out even sooner and begin looking over these drawings, begin scheduling these meetings, all that sort of stuff.
So I think we want to have a serious meeting about it. From my perspective, what the money's going to look like, at least. Probably, we only have so many board meetings in November and December. So I think that Mike and Jared and Elijah are going to sit down and figure out how to get us informed about what you're doing in the next 4 weeks. Is that enough time? 5 weeks? And Terry Kerr?
Yeah, it sounds like it. I would think, Elijah, you'd want to look at these plans, our old plans of options prior to us meeting at the school.
Elijah, can you live with that schedule roughly?
Yeah, 4 weeks.
4 weeks, okay. All right, anybody else? I think that takes care of Cinda's concerns. Anybody else want to chime in quickly? I'm not trying to rush anyone.
Yes, you are.
Well, a little bit. It's my nature. All right, okay. Thank you, Elijah. I think you've been really very patient with us, and I appreciate it very much. So we'll look forward to hearing from you, and Mr. Kerr will keep us, and Jared will keep us up to date on what you all are doing. And then I would like to walk through it with you all. So I would like to be invited to the walkthrough.
The bad news, Elijah, it's going to probably be 4:30-ish at the earliest that we meet there.
Okay, that's no problem. We'll make whatever needs to happen work.
This is the first time Elijah's ever worked with a board that has day jobs, so he has to get used to. Oh, sorry.
Now, Elijah's going to get. I can see he's interested. We piqued his interest, so that's good. Okay, so we're going to put that on the table tonight. Then you guys can start work on. And we're excited. It's a beautiful building. I actually think you'll enjoy the project. It's just an exquisite little school, and it needs a little bit of work, but I think it will handle change well. It's just a nice building. I did want to say finally, Jared, the petty cash for student activities, could you tell us briefly what we're looking at here? How much money do you need?
Yes, that is a new petty cash for student activities at the senior high. Recently, it's been kind of a work in progress, got shut down over COVID, but 2 students at the senior high started what they're calling ASAP fund, part of student activities. And what the purpose of it is to get not necessarily money, but supplies, clothing, shoes, anything that they feel that, and they work closely with the guidance counselors. And they will continue to work closely with the guidance counselors to identify students who are in need of something. Like I said, whether that is a coat, a new pair of shoes, food for the weekend, something, but it's a student-run organization that's raising money to provide this to students in need at the high school. And these boys have done a wonderful job. They've just started raising money, but what this petty cash account will allow them to do is to have some cash at the high school, certainly monitored by the secretary at the high school who oversees student activities, but it will give them the flexibility to, in a moment's notice, provide a student with something that they may need, whether that's $20 to take home for the weekend to buy food. We've had multiple conversations, and it will always be their goal is to provide them not with cash, but with a gift card to Bilo or a gift card to Giant Eagle or some other way to make sure that those funds are going where they need to be. But
Would it have a maximum per? I mean, you can't give one kid $300 and another necessarily $25, right?
Well, it's going to depend on the need. I mean, and that's up to the students. I mean, it's a student activities. The district certainly helps oversee the financial end of it and make sure it's going, everything, because student activities are an audited fund within the district. So it is our job to make sure that the money's being spent well. But the students themselves are not going to know who the money goes to. That is up to the guidance counselors under also the supervision of the principals at the building. But it is up to the students to raise the money. So the guidance counselors and the principals make the decision as to where the money goes and who has that need and how much it can be. If the student needs a new pair of shoes, it may be a little more than $20. If a student needs food for the weekend, it may just be $20. That's up to them, and that's up to the students to also help the principals and guidance counselors, know what amounts they are comfortable with and where they want the money to go. But this cash option just gives them the option in an emergency situation to give somebody cash if that's the only avenue that they possibly have.
So we're capitalizing it. So for this little entrepreneurial, and it sounds wonderful. Two things. I'd like to know how much you're at, how much, if you need anything from us as startup cash. And number two, I would love it to bring these students into the full board and have them give us a 20-minute presentation on the work they're doing.
Yeah, and I know they certainly would be. I've been working closely with them over the past couple of weeks, and they've done a phenomenal job of already raising over $7,000 through GoFundMe. So we just have that set up, and it just started. So we're working on ways to get that out to the community and for the community to know that it's there. But it was amazing the first couple of days to see how quickly some people who just by word of mouth found out about the fund. But you're not asking us for a cash outlay right now, or are you? I'm not asking for the board to put any money out. What I'm asking for is the ability to create a petty cash account that the cash will come from the student activity for $200 just to have in a reserve at the high school in case that's the only avenue that they can help students is by giving them cash. And all the board
they will not have signatory authority over this account. If they're not 18, they can't.
No students ever have signatory authority over any student activity. Their name is, no student names are on the checking account for student activities.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Jared? But I would like to schedule them. Walter, that's up to Walter.
Jared, are these the two young men that came in probably 6-8 months ago and
They
talked
are.
to us about this?
Yes.
Okay, so because that was a long time ago and they were just in the process of coming up with the idea. So what you want tonight is you just want our permission to start an account. You just want our permission to have the account on paper.
Yeah, any petty cash account, like all the buildings have a very small petty cash account, but they need to be board approved to have petty cash accounts. And that's all I'm asking for tonight is the board to approve a petty cash account for student activities that will solely be used for the ASAP fund. No other student activities needs it. There's no reason to have it. That's why we don't have one right now. But in this situation is a little unique, and it'd be good for them to have one available to them.
And then who is going to physically hold the cash? Is it going to be in the principal's office or the guidance counselor, the faculty advisor?
The building secretary would be the one. She's the one who oversees the checking account. She will not be making the decisions as to who gets what. She would be, asked by the guidance counselors to say, here's what we need this for. Everybody signs a paper to say $20 left on this day for this student, and that would only be known amongst the administration at the building and the guidance counselors. No student will ever see who gets what.
Okay, I was just concerned about who was going to be responsible for the actual bookkeeping of the funds, and I didn't particularly want it to be a faculty member, a student, or, the secretary is fine.
Yep, the secretary already oversees all the bookkeeping of all the student activities at the building.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or any objections? Okay, looks like we're good to go then. The committee will recommend that we, on that motion. I think that's exciting. I'm anxious to talk to have an opportunity to meet with those students again. Jared, I noticed on the agenda that they're putting the index up to, that's not a typo, is it? You put 3.7% on there.
Nope, that's not a typo. That is Indiana's approved index for 21-22. It was just released at the end of September. And in November, I will have a schedule for the 21-22 budget adoption. And we can, in December, we can look at making a decision as to whether we want to stay within the index or go above and pass those motions. But we can talk more about that at the November Audit and Finance Committee.
Yeah, I'm curious how I don't think in my time on the board, I don't think it's 8 years now. I don't think I've ever seen it go that high.
No, that has been our highest number, like you said, in 8+ years.
I thought maybe you meant to write 2.7. Okay. All righty. That's going to be an interesting discussion. Okay. Audit going okay?
Yes, they were in a couple weeks ago. They had 1 or 2 adjustment entries that they recommended, but we have our AFR complete and ready to submit by the end of the week, which is our big financial report to the state every year. So that's good news. And then they will continue with some audit follow-up here in November and hopefully have it complete by the end of December.
Okay. So your preliminary final numbers are holding.
Yes, they're pretty much right around where we talked about them last month, just over. We did just revenue down a little bit to defer some federal revenue, but the numbers did not change much from where they were a month ago. So the 1.4 million is pretty much where we're going to end the year.
Okay, good. That's good news. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions or anything for the good of the order before we go to executive session?
The only other thing that I would like to bring up, and I just got this information today, so I would like to, and I can send an email to the board, is I was presented today from our financial manager, Jamie Doyle, with a refinancing option and for the board to consider this year to refinance some of our current debt. A very small savings, she's projecting of about $66,000, with most of that happening in the current school year. What she would like to do is just make a presentation to the board at our next meeting, November 16th, of what that refinancing would look like and the potential savings, so that we could possibly continue with that this year and take advantage of that savings if the board would like to do that. So
all of the debt?
No, just a portion of it. Just the portion that's able to be refinanced right now, which is the 2012, 2013, and 2015. And it's not even all of that debt. It's just portions of it based on what is economically advantaged for us to refinance.
Tell her we wanted it at -2%. I'm serious. I'm joking. The way the market's gone, I'm not, I don't know. They should be paying us. That's how I feel about it. Yeah, let's talk to them. I'd like to hear her presentation.
Yep. So she'll be available to do that at our November 16th board meeting, with a motion available that evening as well, if the board wants to move forward with the refinancing.
Not saying too much about the bond market right now, but that's okay. Okay. Anybody else have anything? It's 6:45. If not, thank you. Great meeting. Appreciate everybody's patience. And I guess we meet now at executive session. We're adjourned. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Elijah.
Thank you, everyone.